All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back to our monthly cooking demo. My name is Ethan, and I'm the program manager in Andover. Today, for our festive holiday recipe, I also have my sous chef, Santa, along as well, and wearing my holiday armadillo holiday sweater. So for today's cooking demo, we're keeping it festive with the holidays, and we're making a no-bake almond balls festive dessert. This one is pretty quick, pretty easy, and I say that coming from somebody who does not consider themselves a baker at all. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. It's a delicious holiday dessert, including only 5 ingredients. It's gluten-free and vegan, so it's a great recipe to take to those holiday dinners, holiday parties, where there's a bunch of people with different dietary restrictions and choices, so kind of appeals to the masses there. It's also a simple snack for your kids to leave out for Santa, so throw on your holiday sweater, holiday music, and go ahead and make these. So this will be recorded. You can jump back and watch that recording. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Our first step is adding our almond butter to the bowl. So the recipe calls for half a cup of almond butter. Now, one thing I want to talk about with almond butter is that you want to make sure that you're choosing an almond butter that doesn't have all these added oils in them. So when I was at the store, I was looking back and forth between two, and one said no stir, because you know how it all just kind of separates, and it's not the most fun part, but that's the one that has all those added oils in it. So for better choice of ingredients, this one is literally just almonds. For a better choice of ingredients, I'm going to spend a couple seconds stirring it up. Now, our recipe calls for half a cup of almond butter. I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to deal with any sort of measuring utensils. So what I did was I converted it to grams, and I'm going to use my food scale here. My bowl is much bigger than you need, but it was red, so I felt like it was festive to use for today. So in making that conversion for almond butter, half a cup, it's going to be 128 grams for me. But again, I checked that out in converting half a cup to tablespoons, and then how many grams are in a tablespoon of this almond butter. So mine is 128 grams. I zeroed out my scale. So I'm going to start adding this in. And our recipe does say to start with this, but I recommend adding this almond butter, especially if you're using the scale, before adding in the flour, because if I add too much, then I can take it out without it being mixed at all and put it back in without doing any cross-contamination. So 128 grams. Oop, I'm a little past. So we got to take out just a couple here. There we go. Ooh, on the dot. Doesn't always happen that way. All right. I'll leave my knife in here for a second. You'll see why. Next, we're going to go ahead and add in our coconut flour. So I just found this one. So it's Bob's Red Mill coconut flour, gluten-free, great for baking. If you want to use another sort of flour, feel free. I've never made this recipe with another kind. But if you do, just look up that conversion factor to make sure that your consistency is still the same. So 1/4 a cup of the coconut flour. I'm going to add this in with the almond butter right into my bowl. This recipe, I have to say, is probably great to make with children, because we do get a little messy. All right, and our last thing that we're going to add to the bowl is our maple syrup, bringing in some of that holiday sweetness. Just 2 tablespoons of maple syrup going in. One. Two. We're just going to take this right to the sink. All right, so our next step is to mix this all up. So I like to leave my knife in here that I used for the almond butter, just to start the mixing when it's still a little bit more liquidy, but you're going to see it thicken up pretty quickly. And once that happens, just to help make sure that everything is mixed well together, I'll use my hands. So like I said, gets a little messy. Make sure those hands are nice and clean before you get started, but you'll have to wash them a couple times in between. All right, so now's about that time. Don't want any almond butter left to the side. Make sure those sleeves are rolled up. You want to get anything on your nice holiday sweaters. And we're just going to go ahead and mix this on up. You want to make sure that all that flour is mixed in. All right. And the next step is going to be scooping it out and rolling it into our balls that are about an inch thick. Depending on the size that you make, it will make about 8 to 10. I'm going to be using a spoon to try to keep mine as similar in size as possible. But if you have an ice cream scoop or a cookie scoop, I don't know, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not a baker, so if a cookie scoop is a thing, go ahead and use that. Clearly, I don't know. I don't bake a lot because I don't even know. But I do have a spoon here, so I'm going to do my best to make sure that they are the same size. And then we're going to roll them out into our balls and add them to either a plate with parchment paper on it or a baking sheet. You want to try to really get them closed up, and you'll see why in a little bit. So sometimes that mixture can kind of break apart a bit in your bowls. So as I get to the end, what I like to try to do is almost dab so that I'm not losing any bit of almond butter in here. This is a super simple recipe to double if you need to make more. You can always make them a little bit smaller depending on how many you're looking to make. Looks like mine will be about 8 here. All right. We have 5 so far. You see one, I did make one a little bit bigger, I can tell, so I might only have a 7 here. There is a reason why using that consistent scoop is helpful, but sometimes it doesn't always play out perfectly. That's all right. My lack of baking skills is showing here. All right, so we have our almond mixture all formed into balls. Now I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands very quickly, and then we'll go into that next step. Which is going to be tossing them in the freezer. So I played around with some different times for how long to leave them in the freezer. And at least 5 minutes is really what you want, at least 5 minutes. But if you can leave them in a little bit longer, it does help for the next step. So we're going to go ahead and put these in the freezer. I'm going to show you what they look like very quickly. We'll toss these in the freezer, and then we'll talk through next steps. Our recipe is super short and super quick and easy today. So I'm going to go ahead and stall just for a minute. I thought this would be a good time to discuss mindfulness and eating around the holidays, especially with it coming up so soon. So generally during this time, there are foods that are a little bit more calorie dense, maybe a little bit less nutrient dense than the foods that we eat on a day-to-day basis. There are festive holiday desserts. This is one included that don't have those main protein sources, don't include fruits and vegetables, but I just want to remind everybody that this is temporary. It's a celebrational time. So try to allow yourself to fully enjoy the moment and not let guilt follow you around during this time. We can enjoy our holidays in moderation, and maybe that even includes some of these no-bake almond balls. But we also want to try to avoid the pressure and working out more to make up for those calories. We want to make sure that we're maintaining balance within our workouts and within our nutrition. Because remember, we're in this for the long game. We're trying to maintain a balanced approach to improve and maintain our health for many, many years to come. All right. So I have a couple tips to share with you in a moment that I like to take into the holidays, but let's get back into our recipe for that next step, which is probably adding in my favorite part. So in our freezer is the almond balls. They're starting to form, cool a bit. What we're going to do next is melt our chocolate chips. So this recipe calls for half a cup of dairy-free white chocolate chips. Again, my favorite part, I love white chocolate. It's my favorite type of chocolate. Now, I did find these dairy-free chocolate chips that I would like to share with you. So these here are allergen-free. So it says they're great for like taking into schools. Made from 14 different allergens: wheat, peanuts, tree nuts, dairy, soy, egg, yada, 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 a bunch of them. So I found these, but if you don't want to worry about having them be dairy-free, just go ahead and use regular white chocolate chips. So again, I did that conversion, so I can go ahead and use the scale here. So I'm going to start putting these into my dish. My scale is going to call for 120 grams of these mini white chocolate chips. We're going to get them here in the bowl. Ooh, a little over. There's so many. The scale isn't moving a ton. All right. So I'm going to try to keep this simple and just pop these into the microwave for a minute to melt those up. And then let's get into tip number one that I like to carry into the holidays with me to help maintain that balance across my nutrition. The first one is staying hydrated. So many times we can confuse hunger with thirst. So try to keep your hunger cues in check by staying nice and hydrated. So first thing in the morning, what I like to try to do is drink a glass of water. I know some of you may prefer coffee first, and that's totally okay. Just go ahead and try to reach for that glass of water, maybe before the second cup. Number two, try to ensure that you get plenty of greens in prior to your holiday meal. Maybe that's having a green smoothie in the morning or a big salad for lunch, but a lot of those traditional holiday dishes lack some of those nutrients, so we want to make sure that we get them in. Include some of those greens that are a little bit more nutrient dense and may help eat those foods that we enjoy in moderation later, because we'll be a little bit more full from the foods earlier. Number three, give yourself some time before desserts. So let your body digest its food, maybe before going for that next plate or dessert. We can sometimes rush it a little bit, and we haven't given our body enough time to recognize if it's full. Bouncing back and forth here a little bit. White chocolate chips are melted. So let's go ahead and start mixing these up. We can get that nice smooth consistency. And then number four, I heard this one a few years ago and it's just stuck with me. The first bite tastes the same as the last. And so we don't have to eat everything that's on our plate. Maybe we want to share that dessert with someone else or grab a few bites off the kids' plates. All right. So our white chocolate chips are all melted down. Let's go ahead and grab our almond balls from the freezer. So our recipe card says that you can stick a fork in and then put it into your white chocolate to make sure that's evenly spread around. That doesn't work super great for me. So I like to use my spoon that I just mixed the chocolate with and my fork to transport over and roll around a little bit, pour that chocolate on, get it spread across there to just limit the opportunity for it to fall apart, especially if you haven't left it in long enough. So we are just going to coat these in our white chocolate. Make sure that there's a nice even spread on there. We are almost done with this recipe. Hopefully now you're seeing how quick and easy it is. It can be fun for the family to do together. The last step, or maybe it's, I should say the second to last step here, is going to be completely optional, and that's going to be adding in our topping. So the recipe said to add sprinkles, and I decided that I didn't want to add sprinkles. I wanted to make it a little bit more festive. So I'm going with crushed candy cane. I just have one candy cane. Then in a moment here, I'm going to crush up into this bag to add as my topping in making these a bit more festive. And I also just love white chocolate and peppermint. So it's a great combination. All right, our last one is going in. And we get all this chocolate. All right, awesome. All right. Ooh, a little bear there. This is the spot. Okay, perfect. Last step, let's crush up that candy cane. So I'm gonna open up my candy cane here, and I just grabbed a baggie. So I'm gonna toss that in here. I knew this would happen. Pressure on the spot. You know how hard opening candy canes are? The last time I did this, it was smooth sailing, and then I knew the pressure of being on camera would get to me, and I would struggle. And here we are. Let's try this again. Perfect. All right, so we're gonna toss this in our bag, and to break this up, and I'm going to apologize in advance for any of these loud sounds that you might hear. We're just gonna use this little canister that we have that has some coffee supplies in it, and break up this candy cane to help break it up into as small as possible. Now, the recipe says to use a tablespoon, 1 tablespoon. You probably noticed I'm not measuring this out. I'm just gonna lightly put some on top, and it doesn't even use the entire candy cane. So not too much added sugar happening here. And again, this step is gonna be totally optional. You can just finish with the white chocolate chips, the melted white chocolate on top if you'd like. All right. So our candy cane is all crushed up now. So let's go ahead and just sprinkle a little bit on top. Some of these pieces are a little bit bigger, so I'm going to try to avoid those. All right, there we go. Let's just go ahead and rinse off my hands quick. And our final step for today, we just have to pop these in the freezer. And that's all we'll have. We're going to put these in the freezer for 15 minutes. Now, I'm going to show you what these look like before they go into the freezer. There we go. Right. There we go. And I did pre-make some to show you what they look like after. So our final product, I'll be honest with you, doesn't look a lot different, but tastes spectacular. So here is our final product. This is going to be with those candy canes on top, those crushed candy canes. You can see that white chocolate, maybe some of my almond butter sneaking through. But that is all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll be back to our cooking demos in January, so we hope to see you all then. Have a great rest of your year, a happy new year, and we'll see you back here soon. Thank you so much.